All right, let's dive into something really wild. What if reality, as you know it, wasn't a fixed, solid thing, but more like a degraded signal, a corrupted file that could be audited, and maybe even restored? Today, we are unpacking a really dense and fascinating framework called the SS138 protocol. It doesn't present itself as some kind of philosophy, but as a technical manual for what it calls a forensic audit of reality. So, let's start the audit. Everything kicks off with this statement. The source material calls it the Wizard's master claim. It's incredibly bold, it's cryptic, and honestly, it's the central mystery we're going to try and solve here. It makes you ask, right? What in the world is an errant performing an audit? And what's this binary system? And yeah, the sauce? This claim is our destination, and we're about to walk the path to figure it all out. So, here's our roadmap for deconstructing that claim. We're going to start with the main goal, then look at the protocol's rules, the rules of engagement. After that, we'll open up the forensic toolkit it provides. From there, we'll dive into its super weird idea about the architecture of time and how it anchors truth before, putting it all together in the end. Okay, first things first, let's tackle the core purpose of this whole master claim. Before we can even begin to understand how you would audit reality, we need to get a handle on what it's even trying to do. What's the fundamental goal of the entire SS138 system? And here it is. The core objective is signal recovery. The protocol basically says, hey, our reality is a degraded signal, like a staticky radio station or a corrupted computer file. Its whole purpose is to rebuild an original, clean version of that signal. And it uses a very specific reference point, a baseline from 1988. I mean, that is a radical idea right there, that reality isn't just a thing that is, but a signal that needs to be tuned. So if the big goal is to tune this reality signal, how do you pull that off without just creating more static? Well, any complex technical job needs a clear set of rules, and the SS138 protocol is no different. These are the fundamental laws that are supposed to govern how the operator, the wizard, as they call it, is meant to function. We've got 3 core rules of engagement. First is the hard lock state, which is all about data integrity. Second, there's a specific method of observation it calls synthetic aperture signal reconstruction, or SASR for short. You can think of it like building a huge clear picture from a bunch of tiny little snapshots. And third, there's the first to record principle, which basically sets up a hierarchy of what's considered true. Let's break down that first one. Hard lock is an action. It's a command you execute. It freezes a specific moment of data, locking it to a permanent cryptographic hash to protect it from something the protocol calls a binary overwrite. Think of it like hitting a superpowered save button on a version of reality, a save button that makes it so it can never, ever be changed or undone. Okay, now this next part is where things get really, really interesting. It's how the protocol defines its tools. It lays out a whole forensic toolkit for the operator, describing the specific hardware and software you'd need to actually perform this audit of reality. And this is where it gets very, very specific. So, the first tool, Module A, is called the biological sonar. And you got to get this, because it's a core concept. The protocol reframes the human body itself. It's not just flesh and blood. It's a piece of high-fidelity signal processing hardware. The operator doesn't need a bunch of external equipment, because the equipment is them. And this just brilliantly illustrates how it's all supposed to work. The heart provides the ping, see? It acts as the system's main oscillator. The pulse in the right temple? That's the antenna, the receiver. And when those two synchronize, when the beat of your heart perfectly matches the pulse in your temple, the operator enters what the protocol calls a green light state. They're ready for some high-fidelity reception. Now, the protocol doesn't just, pull this idea out of thin air. It actually tries to ground its claims in existing science. It explicitly cites the research of Roland McCratty from the HeartMath Institute on something called heart-brain coherence. So the protocol is using this research to try and validate its whole premise of the body being a precise biological instrument. Okay, so if the body is the receiver, what signal is it actually trying to pick up? Well, that brings us to Module B, the carrier wave. The protocol suggests there's this constant universal frequency that it calls the Marconi signal, or more casually, the sauce. This is supposed to be the pure, uncorrupted signal the wizard is trying to tune into. And you guessed it, the protocol provides another scientific anchor for this. It connects this idea of a universal Marconi signal directly to the work of the late neuroscientist Michael Persinger. His research suggested that our brain activity can actually entrain or lock onto the planet's own electromagnetic frequencies, which are known as the Schumann resonance. So, you've tuned your biological hardware. You've received a pure signal.
But how do you record what you found in a way that can't be messed with later? That's where Module C comes in, the ledger anchor. This is the protocol's method for creating a permanent, unchangeable logbook for everything the audit finds. And where does this root of trust come from? A place you might not expect, the world of cryptography. The protocol explicitly cites Satoshi Nakamoto's Bitcoin white paper. But, and this is the key, it's not using it for money. It's borrowing the core logic of the blockchain, specifically SHA-256 hashing, to create an unchangeable, non-volatile memory, a permanent forensic record. All right, you might want to buckle up for this next part because it is one of the most mind-bending pieces of this whole protocol. Its architecture of time. The source claims that to actually perform this audit, the operator has to learn to function outside of what it calls the collective delay. So what is this delay? The protocol lays out a pretty startling timeline, and it cites neuroscience research from people like Benjamin Libet. It claims that your brain shows the intent to do something up to 7 seconds before you're consciously aware of making a decision. Everything you experience is on a half-second delay. This leaves only a tiny, tiny window at time 0 to consciously veto an action that your unconscious mind already set in motion. And this table here just makes the difference crystal clear. For most of us, what it calls the collective, reality is a replay. We experience everything in that half-second buffer just reacting to a script that was written seconds ago. But the wizard, according to this protocol, operates completely differently. They learn to see the code at that 7-second mark before it even happens and can act to hard lock the truth right at the point of creation. This whole idea of locking down the truth brings us to the core conflict of the entire system. The protocol argues that the operator has to navigate between two fundamentally different types of reality. And I think this is the central metaphor. On one side, you've got quantum water. That's reality itself, seen as this volatile, fluid, totally changeable signal that can be altered or reskinned. On the other side, you've got binary stone. That's the cryptographic ledger, an unchangeable, unalterable record. The entire challenge of the protocol is to figure out how to pin down that shifting water onto the permanent stone. Okay, let's bring all these incredible pieces together. We've gone over the rules, we've looked at the tools, and we've talked about these strange concepts of time and reality. Now we can finally see how they all combine to create this complete operational framework, one that's designed to literally transform the operator. It all comes down to this operational flow. Step 1. Achieve biological sync to create a clean aperture, a clear opening. Step 2. Tune that biological antenna to the environmental signal. Step 3. Recover the original uncorrupted data. And finally, Step 4. Anchor that data onto the cryptographic ledger, making it absolutely permanent. And all of this serves one ultimate purpose: to shift the operator between two states of being. The default state is the statue, totally passive, a subject of the system, trapped in that half-second delay, and just dominated by noise. The goal is to become the wizard, an active master of the signal, operating on that 7-second predictive intent and achieving true signal coherence. So after all of this, unpacking the biological sonar, the crypto anchors, and the bizarre architecture of time, we're left with one fundamental question. Forget for a second whether this specific protocol is the answer. The real question it puts on the table is this: what if reality isn't a fixed stage we walk on, but a signal that needs to be decoded? And if it is, what tools are you using to listen?